Alright, everyone, welcome to FPS, a show made by game developers for game developers. And this is the first episode, and I welcome Mr. Lazy from Lazy T Studios to our show. Welcome, Lazy.
Thank you very much for having me.
Alright, so Lazy, you've been working on games for a long time. Could you kindly introduce yourself to us?
Yeah, so I'm Tom, or Lazy, on the internet. Just by name, not by work ethic, I like to think. But yeah, I've been making games for around 3 years or so at this point. Started off studying game design and development at university. Graduated just last year, actually. And actually just started today my master's degree in game art. So yeah, just been making little prototypes, taking part in game jams, trying to take every opportunity to learn. And yeah, I also make YouTube videos. I guess I do that too. But yeah,
That is a pretty solid portfolio. So let's just start off with the deep end of the question, right? How do you manage your time with university and then game development and you it all just becomes a lot, right? And as far as I know, and we'll be touching on this later, you're working on two games at the same time, right? So what's your routine? Could you go through that what do you do when you wake up? What's your thought process and all that?
yeah, I'm actually working on 3 games because 2 wasn't enough. To be fair, one of them's more a freelance work where I work with another team, and then I've got 2 personal projects that I'm doing as well. I mean, I try to just stay organized in kind of like, it's tricky because I don't really feel like I'm that much of an organized person, even though I feel like everybody probably would say I am. I never feel like I am that structured. I don't know. I just try to have a bit of a routine. A routine's something that I like consistency, and that's just helped a lot, I feel. I think the main thing is I genuinely just love what I do. Like, so I never feel like I'm working all that much, because if it wasn't for the fact that this paid the bills, it paid rent, I'd still be doing it anyway, So I don't know. I just feel like I'm just always having fun. So there's no semblance of structure because I wake up and I want to make games, I don't even play games as much as I used to anymore. Because I just make them instead. It's fun. Silksong being the only exception, of course. I've definitely taken some time to do that.
Yeah, Silk Song's launch was huge, and let's first introduce your projects, and then we'll dive into those questions of Silk Song and your games. So, would you introduce your games to us and what they are?
Yeah. So my main project is Amber's Tale, which is I'm titling a truly non-linear Metroidvania. As you essentially get to choose the order you unlock abilities via a skill tree, rather than just going to an arbitrary location, killing a boss, and getting a specific skill. Really trying to give a bit more agency to the players. So that's a 2D pixel art Metroidvania. I'm also working on Stranded, which is a harder one to explain. It's kind of like a cross between Vampire Survivors and Satisfactory, I guess. Again, a 2D game, top down. You basically build a factory by day and you defend it by night. And yeah, that all started off as a Blackthorn prod game. So yeah, we'll probably end up going into that later. But then the final game I'm working on is called Radio Overlords, which is a rhythm game where you fight bosses to the beat. Imagine Guitar Hero crossed with Hades, and you've got Radio Overlords.
Those projects certainly sound interesting. They're a mashup of different ideas and different genres, and it'll be really interesting to see what you cook up with those. And let's start with Amber's Tale. Firstly, what inspirations were for the game, and seeing Hollow Knight Silk Song's launch, how are you seeing the launch of that game and creating developing your own game with that in mind?
Yeah, I mean, starting off with what kind of inspired me and got me started. I mean, Amber's Tale actually started off as a project for university. I didn't have an idea as to I had a module where I had to just make a game. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do, so I just started following some tutorials, making a little bit of a side scroller. And initially it was going to be a roguelike. I started making some little Instagram reels and things, just kind of sharing my progress, just to kind of keep myself accountable. And it wasn't until about like 2 months into just making this little prototype that I picked up Hollow Knight for the first time, because I hadn't actually played a Metroidvania prior to this. I tried Hollow Knight once before and got lost, didn't really understand the whole concept of the game, and then gave up before I'd even gotten to the first boss. It wasn't until I played it again that I was like, oh, you're meant to get lost in these games. That makes more sense. Now I get it. And then I just fell in love with it. I also then played a game called Haiku the Robot, which is another Metroidvania made by Mr. Morris Games, the guy who made Rusty's Retirement. And that was also a big inspiration, because that was a Metroidvania made by one person. It was pixel art as well. And that game really inspired me. And just his journey generally. I mean, he's from Estonia, sole developer, making basically the thing I wanted to. It was like, okay, cool. Like, I like this. So yeah, decided to make Amber's Tale a Metroidvania. This is before it even had a name. It was just I think it was called Project Sequoia, I called it, because I just got back from the Sequoia National Forest in America, and I was just like, I like trees, let's name my project after a tree. It wasn't that deep.
That's a deep lore right here.
Yeah. But yeah, it just kind of spiraled from there. And one of my biggest gripes with Metroidvania was the fact that even though they are painted as non-linear, they're really not. Like, especially with Silksong more recently, like, sure, there are a couple different places, different ways you can kind of beat the game, but for the most part, they are designed in such a way that you're meant to do X boss first, then Y boss second, and there's very much a desired path that you should take. And I wanted to branch away from that and have it such that anyone playing the game could have their own unique journey. And that would mean having quite a number of permutations, but setting it up such that regardless of which order you unlock abilities, you will create your own path. So yeah, that's kind of the main kind of driving factor for Amber's Tale at this point, just making everyone's adventure unique.
We've seen with non-linear stories, especially with the new Pokemon Scarlet game, that these games aren't really that easy to implement non-linearity to them, because there will always be some sort of desired or optimal path to beat the game. So how do you deal with those challenges, or have you thought about that?
Yeah, the main thing is just level design. That's the real battle. And it's something that we're currently working on a pretty detailed demo at the moment. And we, for the most part, got the main kind of progression routes in place. In the demo, there are going to be, I think, 5 abilities that you can unlock, as opposed to what will be in the final game, which will be probably like 15 plus. But essentially making it such that whenever you get an arbitrary upgrade point, there is always a choice, and making it such that you will always have multiple avenues you can go down. So the first one that you get is you can choose between unlocking the wall jump, a dash, and a kind of desolate dive type ability from Hollow Knight. So then it's a case of, okay, depending on which one the player unlocks, where do we want them to go with it? So then you make a level, that uses that ability. So if you've unlocked the dash, you make a lava pool that's too far to jump over. you know, something generic, something that you need the dash to cover the distance. And then the player will continue to the next checkpoint through that route. If you unlock the wall jump, you know, maybe there's a high wall that you have to jump up to and over in order to access a second route. And then if you go for the slam, well, there's a little bit of broken rubble that you can destroy and access a third route. Then naturally you'll get to the next checkpoint in the level, and you'll get another ability point. So then you've got another set of permutations. Well, which direction can I go there? You could now say the first time round you upgraded and unlocked the dash ability. Well, on the next checkpoint, you can now unlock the wall jump that you previously had available, the slam that you previously had available, and a new ability that would have been gatekept by the dash. So it's maybe less about making it have infinite possibilities or like an optimal path, and more a case of saying, all right, what do you as a player want to explore next? You know, like, do you want a bit more mobility at the start of the game? Do you want to be dealing lots more damage at the beginning of the game but be quite stationary? Basically, just how do you want to play the game? Well, asking how do you want to play the game, and then allowing you to do it, rather than saying this is how I want you to play the game. Just kind of flipping it on its head.
Yes, that is a very interesting way to solve this problem, how you approached it. It gives really those vibes of being a roguelike where you can choose your own some sort of outcomes. Alright, I want this boost or I want this boost, and then implementing it in a way where it's a Metroidvania. That is really cool. That is something we haven't really seen with any other game implemented so far. So that is really cool, and I look forward to playing the demo. How did that game, firstly, the idea is insane, implementing Factorio with Vampire Survivor. Like how do those two games come together? What was your thought process behind that, and where do you plan on taking this project on?
Yeah, so Stranded is a game that I never intended to make. It was kind of like an accident. So I took part in a Blackthorn Prod competition. They invited me to take part. It was one of the ones where I would compete against 5 other developers for a chance to win $3,000. And I was like, I'm broke. I could do with $3,000. Sure, let's take part. I make games. What's one more game? Even though it was going to be happening over Christmas, which was a bit messy, but that is what it is. But the theme that we got for the challenge was metamorphosis, and I didn't want to go with like the traditional kind of like changing of the player kind of vibes. Like the player could metamorphosize into, or metamorphose, I guess the word is, into something else. I wanted to kind of, again, flip things on their head and be like, well, what if we had the environment metamorphosize? So it made me think of factory builders. I love my factory builders. Like, I've played an unhealthy amount of hours of Satisfactory and such. So I was like, okay, well, the idea of a factory builder is essentially completely changing the environment to be this, or changing an environment from something that is quite nature dense and pure into this absolute metal machine of efficiency. Like, I'd say that meets the definition of metamorphosis. So started off making this little factory builder, and then I needed another little twist because I didn't think that would kind of do it. So I was like, okay, well, let's just add enemies in. I guess adding enemies is probably the quickest and easiest way to like add some dynamic kind of tension to the game. So I was like, okay, well, let's make this a factory builder, but at night there are like waves of enemies that come after you, like vampire survivors. So not only do you have to build your factory in order to, advance the tech tree or whatever, but you need to now do it quickly so you don't die. So yeah, I just kind of started doing that, and each week we got a little twist, and yeah, it just ended up being this kind of like pretty fun, very fast-paced Factorio style game. where you were on your toes and you were always counting down the seconds left until nighttime and trying to build this factory. So yeah, it was a fun little game, and people seem to really like it. Both the judges of the competition and just the audience watching the video. So I was like, okay, I guess it'll be good publicity when the video goes live, because it it's a Blackthorn Prod video. They get views. I put it on Steam, and it got just shy of 5,000 wish lists. So I was like, okay, yeah, I guess I'll keep working on this. So yeah, just kind of kept going with it.
So yeah, for anyone out there, if your game's lacking that spice, just add text-based game, add enemies. You've got a visual novel, add enemies. We have the formula.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of Blackthorn Prod videos, how much tinkering you guys have to do for displaying your game out there? Like, I have to understand that a week's time is not enough to have all of the mechanics being perfect and bug-free. So how do you guys manage that, displaying a perfect build to the audiences on YouTube, and then having a build that's not completely finished, or that's got different bugs and features missing within it? How do you walk around that and avoid those mistakes?
The magic of editing. If your game has a bug, you just simply don't record the bug. You just pretend it's not there in the footage. Like, to be fair, the Blackthorn Prod one, because it was one of the competitions and I got to the finals, it ended up being 3 weeks of development, not just one. So the devs who would get eliminated, naturally it was a week per round, and 2 devs would get eliminated at the end of each week. Because I got to the final, I did get the full duration of development time, but there were still so many bugs. The game was a mess. The code base was disgusting. It was not optimized whatsoever. But each week you kind of just had to showcase your progress, and yeah, you just showcased the best of what you had. Like, we'd be honest with the judges and say, like, listen, these are some of the issues. Here's a bug you need to watch out for. I'm aware of it, but this might break your game if you do it, so just be careful. But for the most part, it was just, yeah, like, make it look pretty enough for the camera, and yeah, just don't record the bad stuff, pretty much.
Since we've delved into that topic of YouTube and all that, let's start with some of the advice and stuff for the new developers who'll see this video and see, alright, game development sounds pretty cool. Why not start here? One of the issues that I saw recently was that YouTube's tutorials have been outdated, and most devs flock to ChatGPT and other AI softwares to learn Unity quicker than following a 40, 60 or 2-hour course. They'd say, alright, GPT or AI is faster, so why not go with it? What's your advice to newer devs starting out? What path should they take? Should they go to the outdated YouTube channels, or should they flock towards AI, which is not always the best, as we've seen?
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't advise learning via AI, because tutorials may be outdated, but AI can just be incorrect. And at least at the end of a tutorial, you'll end up with something that typically works, and you'll, more importantly, know why it works. Whereas just copying something from AI, generally, you won't know why something's not working if it gives you something that's broken, which from experience, it will. It never gives you working code every time. So I wouldn't advise using AI. AI is very much a tool to be used as kind of an assist rather than something to teach you, especially as a beginner, to teach you code. It might be able to give you the fundamentals, like what is a Boolean, what is a float. That kind of stuff is fine, and it can be good for clarifying questions. Like, if you're following along with a tutorial and something's explained that you don't quite understand, you can ask for clarification on what the concept or process is. I think that's fine. But you have to take everything with a grain of salt. I would generally always say, even if a tutorial is outdated, like the concepts will still fundamentally be the same. Like I can't vouch for other engines, but for Unity, which is my engine of choice, even outdated tutorials, like they still work. And ultimately you could just download the older version of Unity, which it would work for, and build it around that, you know? Because the coding principles won't be outdated for the most part. Like there may be a new system, there may be a new tile map system that you can use, but Unity doesn't typically depreciate things very quickly. So odds are that outdated, quote unquote, system is probably still in modern day Unity. Like I'm even thinking back to like old school Brackeys tutorials. Most of those are still relevant for the most part. There may be some bugs in what's being made, but again, that's where you can look at the comment section, because if there are issues, 9 times out of 10 someone else in the comment section will have the same issue, typically with an answer. And B, you can probably go to like websites like Stack Overflow and post the question, or even in worst case scenario, you know, ask ChatGPT or something. Just be like, yeah, so here's the code that I've already followed a tutorial for and somewhat understand, but it's not quite working. Can you see the bug? And then just hope it does. But yeah, I would generally always err on the side of, when learning, because you need to understand how to code and how to do certain concepts before you can take instructions from some AI, you know? Yeah, always go with human-led learning first, unless you absolutely have to do otherwise.
Exactly, I cannot agree more about that. And speaking of Becky's, that dude, he's great. Like, you'd be watching a 4-6-year-old tutorial and it would still work, it would still hold up. He's like one of the best dudes. If anyone wants to start game development, Brackeys is one of the first guys you should go and watch his videos.
Yeah, 100%. Especially if you're wanting to learn Godot now, because he's pretty much fully leaned over to Godot. But even that as a beginner tutorial, it's absolutely phenomenal. Probably some of the best tutorial content on the internet, not just YouTube. So exactly. He's gone over the dark side, joining Godot recently, but we still remember the work he's done for Unity. Speaking of YouTube tutorials, the next logical step is courses. And what are your thoughts about that? Because we've seen time and time again for people to come out that, hey, I've got this course and it's like only $40, $99 or $50. But then that course would show you how to do a certain task, specific task, but it wouldn't necessarily explain how stuff is happening, what the thought process is, what the problem solving is. I've seen that in the new generation of programmers, they can code exceptionally well, but when you ask them their thought process, or when you ask them what their idea was getting to that stage, they don't usually have a cohesive answer for that. So what are your thoughts about courses? And yeah, I mean, I think courses can be a phenomenal resource. I mean, I've taken part in and I'm part of several course kind of communities where, like, that's how I learned. I probably learned more from courses than my actual uni degree, which sounds terrible. It's not. Like, that's not a diss on uni. University typically points you in a certain direction. It's just like it guides you into like how to learn making games as opposed to how to actually code them, or at least in my course that was the general direction. But I think for courses, like, yes, there are going to be loads of kind of slop courses, people who don't really know how to teach. What I would always say is, if there is a course that you're tempted to buy, there's usually going to be a reason for it. Either the person or YouTuber, I'll assume they're a YouTuber because that's, you know, how most people advertise those kind of things now. You'd probably be enticed to buy a YouTuber's course if you are loyal to their brand, for example. Like Thomas Brush has a course that I think is actually pretty good. You might want to buy their course to support them as a creator, and because watching some of their videos, you might trust their guidance because you've seen proof that they can teach, or they can kind of portray a certain opinion or process in their free content that they provide on their YouTube channel. Generally speaking, if I watch someone's YouTube channel and I'm like, okay, they have made good tutorials for free, I'm going to assume that their course is probably a premium version of that. And even if it's the equivalent, like kind of standard, then sure, like I'll get to learn something. I know the quality is good enough that I can learn from it because I have historically, and I get to support the creator. I think that's a good thing when the courses are good. Granted, there are some unsavory characters out there. There are people who will just push out slop, and there is an argument that, you know, you can't really tell the quality of a course until you've bought it. Yeah, it's one of those where try to just filter through some of their free resources first, so you can make a reasonable judgment as to whether it's going to be worth the money. And kind of just to put a cherry on top, if someone says, if you follow my course, you will be able to like make great games, and they're like promising grandeur, that is completely false. Like these are things that are advertised to beginners. Most courses out there are aimed for people who don't know what they're doing at all. They're not really intermediate level kind of things for the most part. Granted, there are exceptions. So yeah, just go into it knowing that if they promise something, they're lying, because you can teach things, but you can't promise success. So just if anyone's promising success, maybe just like avoid that. But if they're promising that, you know, you'll learn stuff, you'll get an understanding, and they're realistic about the fact that, you know, game dev takes time. Like, this will set you on a path, but you'll have to put the work in. They're probably more trustworthy and reliable. But yeah, I think they can be a good resource in the right context.
Yeah, I feel like courses do vary person to person, and especially creator to creator. This goes into the ideology of that in a gold rush you should be selling shovels, not mining the gold. So selling courses kind of for some slop, like you said, makes me think of that already these people are not exactly thinking of with the best of their heart for the people who are going to be buying the courses. But then again, there are some people, like you mentioned, Thomas Brush, he's got great courses. And then we've got GDTV courses. Those are great courses, but again, they sometimes I've taken some of their courses, and I feel like sometimes their courses delve too deeply into a very specific problem, and it does not really improve the problem solving or improve the logic building of the student that much. All in all, I think this is a very sensitive topic, and most people do buy courses thinking that, yeah, they want to support their creator, not that this is something that they'll eventually be using or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's I think it's a good point about the fact that people may not necessarily teach like the why, more they teach the how.
Exactly.
And I think something you've got to consider with kind of YouTuber courses is that most YouTubers ultimately are entertainers first and teachers second. Most, don't get me wrong, there'll be exceptions, but most YouTubers probably don't have teaching degrees. They don't have much like official teaching experience. So I mean, it kind of makes sense that they may not be able to teach as effectively, which is why I kind of say just kind of watch previous tutorials of theirs that are free and just check to see if it's going to be something that's worthwhile. Like, watching their stuff, will you learn a bit of the why along with the how? And if not, then maybe it's not worth going for the premium content.
That is really spot on. Exactly, that is really to the point and something that I really agree with, and I think a lot of people will agree with. And I think that would be all for our side. I think if anyone from the community wants to ask questions from Lizzie, would you be open to answer those?
Yeah, that's fine.
So if anyone wants to ask,
Do I have any pets? Unfortunately not. I'm not allowed pets where I live. I live in a student accommodation, so I'm not allowed. I do have a Stitch plushie, if that counts. That's probably the closest thing I have. I have a Stitch plushie, so...
all right, we've got an interesting question. Do you consider yourself as a game developer first or a YouTuber first?
Okay, so there's kind of two prongs to that. So I would like to be a game dev first and a YouTuber second, but out of necessity, I've had to be a YouTuber first and a game dev second. Because ultimately, until you've made games and you're selling them, like getting to a point as a developer where you are profitable from scratch is really hard. And you're also going to have to learn marketing skills and all of that kind of stuff, which being a YouTuber teaches you.
Gives you an edge compared to others.
Yeah, like I look back at some of my original YouTube videos and I'm like, that's cringe, that's horrible, it's awful. And I look at what I'm making now, and don't get me wrong, it's still not amazing, but it's definitely better than what I used to make. You can see the evolution of my editing capabilities and how I present myself and my games. And I do account that to YouTube. Ultimately, the bottom line is YouTube can help bring income to my game studio, which I need to buy food and pay rent and generally exist. But also to buy assets and help, like third-party help on the game itself. So I've had to be a YouTuber so that I can be a game dev. But if I had, in like an ideal world, I would be a game dev first and a YouTuber second. I think I still would create content, but yeah, YouTube is more of a necessity than like the goal ultimately.
Yeah, especially with the recent game development market, it seems that making a game has become the easier part, and then selling the game, that has become more difficult in recent times.
Yeah, I mean there's just so much competition. And kind of adding on to it, like the whole doing YouTube side of things, it's just as competitive. First of all, yeah. So you not only now do you have to gain all these game development skills, but you have to gain, scripting skills, camera skills, editing skills, marketing, thumbnail creation. It's a whole additional skill set that you have to learn. But I think the more important part is, especially as a YouTube game dev, any time that you're spending making a YouTube video is time that is not being spent making your game. So you are going to be slowing down your own personal progression, because you're not spending as much time practicing game dev. So it's one of those things as well. It generally as well, it's one of the reasons I stopped making devlogs for Amber's Tales, because it was interfering with the actual game development process. Instead of thinking to myself, okay, what is the best next step for the game, which hypothetically, let's say it could be making the map system, right? Making the map system would not make a very good entertaining YouTube video. And it wouldn't look good because it's going to be like prototype art and that kind of stuff. So instead of making the system I need, I would end up making a system that would work well for a video. So not only now am I spending maybe 20 to 30 hours editing that I could have spent making the game, but I'm also making something for the game, but maybe spending 10, 20 hours making the thing for the game, that is something that's just unnecessary for the time being. It's not the best course of progression. So it's a really fine line to tread. So being like a game dev YouTuber is not easy in the slightest, which is like I couldn't do it. I had to stop, which is why I've started doing a different type of YouTube. So it's something to really consider. Like, you also have to really enjoy the content creation side of things, because you're probably going to spend more time doing the YouTube than the actual game dev. So if you don't enjoy creating content, just don't bother. You're gonna get better results just posting a screenshot or a short video on X or Blue Sky. You'll spend a hell of a lot less time, and you'll probably get just as much visibility. So yeah, you really have to graft with YouTube.
Yeah, we've recently seen that short form videos have been taking over long form videos in all apps. And again, coming back to your point, it has become that YouTube demands you to showcase your best. But game development isn't all about adding fancy graphics or adding high speed battle systems. It's about sitting back and checking, alright, does this system work well? Does this system, you need to make classes for saving data and then loading data. And it's so much tedious checking and work, where you could spend a whole day just figuring out how to place a button and how to implement it within the game. And that, again, as your point, that isn't stuff that could be presented on YouTube.
Yeah.
So again, yeah, it is really difficult to be a YouTuber and a game developer.
Exactly. Like, most of game development is going to be the tedious programming systems kind of stuff. Like, that's what you'll probably spend most of your time doing and learning and trying to figure out. And there's only so much you can do to make code on the screen look interesting. So yeah, it's not a great direction to go in.
One more question from the final question, so that we don't take on forever for this interview. Astro asks that why would someone choose Unity over Godot or Unreal Engine?
The short
I think
answer
it comes
is
down to personal choice.
yeah. It ultimately doesn't really matter, right? For the most part, they're all tools that generally will do the same thing, just in different ways, right? Like, I think it's less of a this is the best engine, so you should use this. Like, this is the best engine for 3D, so you should use Unreal. And more of a case of sit down and ask yourself, like, okay, what kind of game do I want to make? What kind of systems will this game have? And which game engine will allow me to make that game? Let's say you want to make a hyper-realistic 3D environment with dynamic foliage, you know? Generally, Unreal will be the option that you go for because it has tools like Lumen, it has dynamic foliage and all those kind of baked in systems that will speed up that process. So it's less of a like, which one should I use arbitrarily? It's like, ask yourself, what do you want to make and which engine has the tools to allow you to do it quickest and easiest. Like, if and on top of that, based on your own personal skill set, like, have you programmed in Python before? If so, then maybe going and learning Godot is going to be the best thing because, you know, GDScript is based on Python. Whereas if you learnt one of the other engines, you'd have to learn a new programming language. You can speed up your game creation process by going with an engine that, you know, tailors to your personal strengths. Like, for example, when the whole palaver went off with Unity, where they were going to charge you ridiculous, stupid money stuff, I actually looked at porting Amber's Tile over to Godot. However, the lighting system in Godot just would not allow me to get the same results. They didn't have freeform lights. And my game very much relies on using freeform lights to get the lighting effects that I use. Because that didn't exist in Godot, I would not have the same output if I switched engines, so that's why I ultimately stayed. And also because Unity backtracks everything, which helped. But yeah, just think about what you want to make, and then look at the tools available with each engine, and let that direct your decision, because ultimately the way you do things in every engine is going to be the same. If you've learned one engine, you will be able to pick up using another engine very quickly. Things will be named different things, but they kind of do the same things for the most part. Like, yeah.
So yeah, that was all the questions from chat, and thank you for your time, T, for Lazy coming to this interview. This was the first episode, and we had a lot of fun. What would be your closing thoughts for this?
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been good fun. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Hopefully we could again meet sometime again in the future. We could collaborate on a project or something. But we're looking forward to keeping engaged with you.
Yeah, for sure. We'll keep in touch.
Perfect. All right, everyone. Thank you for your time, and goodbye.